The bread was burning. Alara Vance smelled it before she saw the smoke, that acrid scent of crust gone from
Baker, I
golden
need
to
bread.
charcoal
Of
of sugar
course, we have
caramelizing
fresh
into
loaves.
bitterness of a
That one,
morning's
the
work
crusty
turning to waste.
Here you are,
She
fresh
lunged
from
for
the
the
oven.
oven, wrapped her hands in thick canvas and yanked the
delicious.
tray free. Too late. The loaves were black as pitch, ruined beyond salvage. She set them on the cooling rack with more force than necessary and pressed her palms against her eyes. That was 6 loaves. 6 loaves at 2 coppers each. 12 coppers she couldn't afford to lose. The bell above her shop door chimed. "We're not open yet," Alara called without turning. Her voice came out sharper than intended frustration bleeding through exhaustion. "I can wait." The voice was deep, rough-edged, like gravel underfoot, and definitely not human. Alara spun around. An orc stood in her doorway. He was massive, had to duck his head to fit through the frame meant for humans. 7 feet tall at least, shoulders broad enough to block the morning sunlight streaming in behind him. His skin was the green of moss on river stones darker along his arms, where old scars traced patterns like ancient text. Tusks curved up from his lower jaw, yellowed ivory against lips cracked from travel and dehydration. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold. Dark brown, almost black, holding the kind of exhaustion that went beyond physical weariness. The kind that lived in bones and wouldn't leave even with rest. Those eyes were looking at the bread in the window display, looking at it with the focused intensity of someone who hadn't eaten in days. Alara's hand went automatically to the knife she kept beneath the counter. Border towns like Millcrest existed in the gray space between kingdoms, human on one side, orc on the other. Travelers from both peoples passed through, but it was rare, and rarer still for them to look this desperate. "I said we're not open," she repeated, but her voice had lost its edge. The orc's gaze shifted from the bread to her face. "I have coin." He pulled out a small leather pouch, held it up. The coins inside clinked with that particular heavy sound of silver. Not copper, silver. Enough to buy every loaf in her shop twice over, which made her more suspicious, not less. Why would an orc with silver be looking at her like he was starving? "Where did you get that?" she asked. "Honestly." His jaw clenched. "Mostly honestly. I did some work 3 towns back. Hauling cargo. The merchant paid well." Hauling cargo. Alara's eyes tracked over his build. He certainly looked strong enough. "What kind of cargo?" "The kind that's heavy. Are you going to sell me bread or interrogate me?" "Fair point." Alara released the knife handle. "Fine, 3 coppers for a loaf. Take your pick." He moved closer to the counter, footsteps surprisingly quiet for someone his size. His eyes scanned the display, the honey wheat, the dark rye, the herb flatbreads she'd finished an hour ago. "That one," he said, pointing to the largest loaf, a full-size sourdough that usually sold to families. "And that one, and 2 of those." He was pointing at half her inventory. "You planning to feed an army?" Alara asked, already reaching for the paper to wrap them. "Just myself. I haven't eaten in 4 days." The words landed like stones in the still water. 4 days. She looked at him again, really looked. The way his armor hung slightly loose, suggesting recent weight loss. The hollow beneath his cheekbones. The tremor in his fingers when he set the coin pouch on the counter. He wasn't just hungry. He was starving. 4 days, she repeated slowly. "Why, because food requires either money or theft, and I ran out of the first before resorting to the second." He pushed the pouch toward her. "Is this enough?" Alara looked at the pouch, then at him, then at the burned loaves still cooling on the rack. She made a decision she'd probably regret. "Put your money away," she said. His expression went carefully blank. "I'm not asking for charity, and I'm not offering it, but you're not my first customer who couldn't afford a full meal." She pulled one of the burned loaves from the rack, broke it in half. The inside was still good, just the crust had gone too dark. She wrapped it in paper, added a wedge of cheese from the coal box, and pushed the package across the counter. "Here, free samples. Call it quality testing. Tell me if the cheese pairs well with the bread." The orc stared at the package like it might explode. "Wow," he asked quietly. "Because I burned 6 loaves this morning and I'm in a generous mood. Take it before I change my mind." Slowly, carefully, he reached for the package. His hands were huge, could have crushed the bread to crumbs without effort, but his grip was gentle, reverent almost. "Thank you," he said. The words came out rough as if he wasn't used to saying them. Don't thank me. Just eat before you fall over. You look like a strong wind could knock you down. He nodded, started to turn toward the door, then hesitated. My name is Rask. Alara Vance. Thank you, Alara Vance. He ducked back through the door and was gone. Alara stood behind her counter for a long moment, staring at the space he'd occupied. Then she looked down at the coin pouch still sitting on the counter. He'd forgotten to take his money. The next morning, Rask came back. This time he had clean clothes still worn, but not the dusty, blood-stained leather armor from yesterday. His hair, black as pitch, had been pulled back into a rough tie. His face looked less gaunt, though still too thin. He set the coin pouch on the counter with deliberate care. You forgot this, Alara said. I didn't forget. I left it. Payment for the bread. I told you it was free. And I'm telling you I pay my debts. His voice was firm. How much for yesterday's meal? Ilara sighed. She recognized stubbornness when she saw it had enough of her own to know the signs. 4 coppers. That's what the bread and cheese were worth. Ras counted out 4 silver coins. Those are silver, not copper, she pointed out. I know. Consider the rest payment for future meals. I'd like to buy breakfast and lunch and dinner if you're selling. This is a bakery, not a tavern. I don't sell dinner. Then breakfast and lunch for a week. Alara calculated quickly. A week's worth of meals, 2 per day, even at generous portions. That's 14 meals. At 4 coppers each, that's 56 coppers. You're giving me, she counted the coins, 2 silver. That's 200 coppers. Yes. That's nearly 4 times what you owe. Then I'm buying a month's worth, or 2 months, however long that amount covers. He met her eyes. I need a place to eat regularly. You have food. This seems efficient. There was something in his voice, a careful neutrality that suggested this wasn't really about efficiency at all. This was about pride, about not accepting charity, about paying his own way. Lara understood pride, had plenty of it herself. Fine, she said, 2 months of breakfast and lunch. But if you're going to be here that often, you're going to help me in the kitchen. Rask blinked. What? I'm one person running this whole shop. I could use an extra pair of hands. You want to eat here every day? You can earn part of your keep by hauling flour sacks and kneading dough. I don't know how to bake. I'll teach you. Consider it part of the service. She crossed her arms. Take it or leave it. He studied her face, searching for something. Mockery, maybe. Pity. Whatever he was looking for, he didn't seem to find it. Deal, he said finally. And that was how Alara Vance acquired an orc assistant. The first week was awkward. Rask showed up every morning at dawn when Alara was firing the ovens and measuring flour. He ducked through the doorway, waited for instructions, and did exactly what she told him to do. Nothing more, nothing less. He was strong, could lift flour sacks that took Alara 2 trips to move, could knead dough with an efficiency that would have taken her arms weeks to develop. But he was also careful, precise. He measured ingredients with the focus of someone performing surgery, double-checked temperatures, asked questions when he wasn't certain. He didn't talk much. Alara liked that. She wasn't much of a talker either, especially in the morning. But she watched him, couldn't help it. He was too large a presence to ignore literally and figuratively. She watched the way he moved around her small kitchen with surprising grace for someone his size. Watched the way he ate the bread she gave him, slow and deliberate, savoring every bite like it was a gift. Watched the way his shoulders would relax slightly when he was focused on work, as if kneading dough was the closest thing to peace he knew. And she wondered what had brought him here. What had left him starving in a border town with silver in his pocket but no food in his belly? What had carved those scars across his arms and that exhaustion into his eyes? But she didn't ask. Privacy was currency in border towns. You didn't spend it lightly. On the 8th day, Rask burned a batch of rolls. He'd been watching the oven. Alara had seen him checking every few minutes, but somehow he'd miscalculated the timing. The rolls came out black on the bottom, salvageable but not sellable. He stared at them with an expression of absolute devastation. It's fine, Alara said quickly. It happens. I burned 6 loaves last week, remember? You didn't burn them. You were distracted. I was paying attention and still failed. Rask, it's bread, not battlefield strategy. I should have done better. The intensity in his voice made her pause. This wasn't about bread. This was about something deeper. Something older. Hey, she said quietly. Look at me. He did reluctantly. You've been working here for 8 days. You've learned how to knead dough-shaped loaves, manage the ovens, and you've only burned one batch. That's actually impressive. Most apprentices don't make it through the first week without at least 3 disasters. I'm not an apprentice, I'm just helping. You're learning, that's what apprentices do, and you're doing fine. Something in his expression softened slightly. You're being kind. I'm being honest, there's a difference. She picked up one of the burned rolls, broke it open. The inside was still good. See, not a total loss. We'll eat these ourselves. You're very good at finding value in ruined things. Alara smiled slightly. Border town skill. Nothing goes to waste here. They ate the burned rolls together, sitting on the back steps of the bakery while the morning sun climbed higher. The rolls were actually pretty good once you scraped off the worst of the char. The bread underneath was soft, still warm, with a hint of rosemary she'd added to the dough. Can I ask you something? Rask said after a long silence. You can ask. I might not answer. Fair. He turned the roll over in his hands. Why did you help me that first day you didn't know me? I could have been dangerous. Alara considered the question, thought about the truth, which was complicated and messy and involved memories she didn't particularly want to examine. About 2 years ago, she said finally, there was a plague in Millcrest. Started in the South District, spread fast, killed about a third of the town before the healers figured out how to treat it. I heard about that plague. It reached the Orc territories too. Well, during the plague, I got sick. Really sick. I was living alone. My parents had died the year before different illness, and I didn't have anyone to care for me. I couldn't work, couldn't afford medicine, couldn't even get myself water most days. She paused, remembering the fever dreams, the way her tiny apartment had felt like a tomb. There was this woman, Mrs. Chen, ran the herb shop 3 doors down. She was human like me, but she'd married an orc merchant years back. Her husband had died in the plague. She was grieving and exhausted and probably shouldn't have been helping anyone. But she showed up at my door every day, brought soup, medicine, sat with me when the fever was bad, didn't ask for anything in return. She saved your life, Rask said quietly. She did. And when I asked her why help me when she had her own grief to deal with, she said, because kindness is the only thing that survives plague. Everything else burns away. Alara met his eyes. So when I saw you standing in my doorway starving, I thought about Mrs. Chen. Thought about how kindness had saved me. Figured maybe it was my turn to pass it forward. Rask was quiet for a long moment. Then Mrs. Chen was wise. She was. I miss her. Did she survive? Yes. She moved back to Orklands about 6 months after the plague ended. Said Millcrest had too many ghosts. I understood that. They sat in comfortable silence, eating burned rolls and watching the town wake up around them. Finally, Rask spoke again. I won't ask you to trust me with my story yet, but I will tell you this. I'm glad I walked into your bakery that morning. This is the first place that's felt like breathing properly in a long time. Alara felt something warm unfold in her chest. Well, I'm glad you walked in too, even if you did almost fall over on my floor. He smiled, actually smiled. It transformed his face, completely softening the harsh lines, making him look younger. I was very dignified about my near collapse, thank you. You were swaying like a drunk sailor. Dignified swaying. Alara laughed, really laughed for the first time in longer than she could remember. And Ras laughed too, a deep rumbling sound that echoed off the alley walls. It felt like the beginning of something. Neither of them knew what yet, but it felt important. The second week, Rask started arriving earlier. Not just dawn, but pre-dawn. When Alara stumbled downstairs in her nightgown to start the fires, she'd find him already waiting outside, patient as stone. You don't have to come this early, she told him on the third morning. I'm awake anyway. Might as well be useful. She couldn't argue with that logic. And truthfully, having someone else to share the quiet pre-dawn hours made them less lonely. They developed a routine. Alara would start the fires while Rask measured ingredients. She'd shape loaves while he prepared the herb mixtures. He'd haul water while she checked temperatures. They moved around each other in the small kitchen, like dancers learning a choreography, awkward at first, but increasingly smooth. And they talked, not about big things, not about pasts or futures or the questions they both carefully avoided. but about small things, the weather, the best way to knead dough for different textures, the gossip Ilara overheard from customers, the strange birds Rask had seen on his travels. Ilara learned that Rask had worked as a caravan guard before coming to Millcrest, that he traveled extensively through both human and orc territories, that he could speak 4 languages, read 3 writing systems, and had a surprising knowledge of trade routes and political boundaries. That's a lot of education for a caravan guard, she observed one morning. Rask's hands paused in their kneading. I had a good teacher, someone who believed education mattered even for warriors. Past tense, past tense, he agreed and didn't elaborate. Ilara didn't push. Everyone in Millcrest had ghosts. You didn't survive in border towns without leaving some things buried. But she told him about her own past, about her parents, both bakers, who taught her the trade from the time she could stand on a stool to reach the counter, about inheriting the shop when they died, about struggling to keep it afloat during the plague, about the loneliness of running a business alone in a town where trust was rare and connections rare. You could hire someone, Rask pointed out. You have customers. The business seems stable. I thought about it, but hiring means trusting someone with my livelihood. And trust, she shrugged, trust is expensive in border towns. But you trust me. Ilara looked up from the dough she was shaping. Rask was watching her with those dark eyes, something vulnerable in his expression. I guess I do, she said slowly, realizing it was true. You've had a month to rob me, poison my food, or burn down my shop. You haven't done any of those things. You show up every day, work hard, and pay for your meals, even though I told you the first one was free. Yeah, I trust you. Thank you, he said quietly. That means more than you know. The moment stretched between them, waited with things neither was ready to name. Then the oven timer chimed, breaking the spell. Bread's ready, Ilara said, moving toward the ovens. Can you get the cooling racks? Already on it. They fell back into rhythm, the vulnerability of the moment tucked away, but not forgotten. The third week, the nightmare started. Ilara lived in the apartment above the bakery, a small space, just a bedroom and a washroom, but it was hers and it was paid for. The walls were thin enough that she could hear the bakery below, and thin enough that she could hear the alley beside it, which was how she heard Rask. It was the middle of the night, around 3 hours before she usually woke. She heard movement in the alley, someone pacing, breathing hard, the particular sound of someone trying to be quiet and failing. Ilara pulled on a robe and went downstairs, peered out the back door. Rask was there, sitting on the steps, where they'd eaten burned rolls, his head in his hands. His shoulders were shaking. Rask, she stepped outside. What's wrong? He looked up sharply and she saw his face in the moonlight, saw the wetness on his cheeks, the raw pain in his eyes. Sorry, he said roughly. I didn't mean to wake you. I'll go. Don't. She sat down beside him, close enough to offer presence, far enough to give him space. Talk to me. What happened? Nothing happened. Just memories. They're worse at night. What kind of memories? He was quiet for a long time. She thought he might not answer. Then, I had a brother, younger by 2 years. His name was Theron. He was good, better than me in most ways that mattered. Kinder, braver. He always saw the best in people, even when they didn't deserve it. Ilara stayed silent, letting him speak at his own pace. There was an accident 6 months ago. We were traveling, I can't tell you where or why, but we were together. There was an ambush, bandits. They outnumbered us badly. Theron told me to run, told me he'd hold them off, buy me time. His voice broke. I ran. I left him there. I survived and he didn't, and I can't stop seeing his face, hearing him tell me to run, knowing I should have stayed. The words tumbled out like a dam breaking. Ilara didn't interrupt. She just listened. And when he finally fell silent, she didn't offer platitudes. Didn't say, it's not your fault, or you did what you had to, or any of the useless phrases people said when they didn't know what else to say. Instead, she said, tell me something good about him. Rask looked at her, surprised. Tell me something that made him, she continued. Not his death, his life. Rask took a shaky breath. He used to collect rocks, interesting stones from every place we traveled. He'd keep them in a pouch and tell me stories about where each one came from. He said rocks were the world's memory. They outlived everything else. He thought that was beautiful. It is beautiful, Alara said softly. He sounds like he was a poet. He was. Terrible at fighting, brilliant at words. He'd write songs that made hardened warriors cry. Rask smiled slightly painfully. He'd probably have a dozen songs about your bread. Then we would have gotten along well. I appreciate anyone who appreciates bread. They sat together in the quiet. Above them, stars wheeled slowly across the sky. Does it get better? Rask asked finally. The guilt, the memories. I don't know, Alara said honestly. I still dream about the plague sometimes. Still hear the sound of the death carts. Still see my parents' faces. It doesn't go away, but it gets different, less sharp. You learn to carry it instead of being crushed by it. How? One day at a time, one loaf of bread at a time, one moment of not thinking about it, then another, until you realize you went a whole hour without the weight, then a whole morning, then a whole day. It never disappears, but it makes room for other things, for new memories, for reasons to keep going. Rask was quiet. Then he reached over and took her hand. His hand was huge, rough with calluses, warm. Her hand disappeared into a small and pale against his green skin. Thank you, he said, for listening. For not judging. Everyone carries ghosts, Rask. The only difference is how well we hide them. They sat like that until dawn started to lighten the sky. Then Rask stood, helped Alara to her feet. I should get cleaned up before we open, he said. Take your time. I'll start the fires. He squeezed her hand once more, then let go and walked away down the alley. Alara stood there for a moment, feeling the phantom warmth of his hand in hers, and wondered when exactly she'd started caring about him. Not as an employee or a customer or a convenient extra pair of hands. As him. As Rask. As this damaged, gentle, complicated person who'd stumbled into her bakery and somehow become important. She didn't have an answer, but she knew standing there in the pre-dawn light that something had shifted between them. Something irreversible. The fourth week, they started spending time together outside the bakery. It began accidentally. Alara had finished the morning's work early and suggested they take a walk to the market for fresh herbs. Rask had agreed, and they'd spent an hour wandering through the stalls, arguing about which herbs were worth the price and which were overrated. It became a routine. After the lunch rush, they'd close the bakery for an hour and explore the town. Millcrest wasn't large, but it was diverse. Humans and orcs, and the occasional elf or dwarf, all conducting business, all maintaining the careful detente that made border towns possible. People stared at them. How could they not? A human woman and an orc man walking together, talking easily, clearly comfortable with each other. It wasn't common, wasn't normal. Alara didn't care. Rask seemed to care even less. Do you ever worry what people think? She asked him one afternoon, as they sat by the river that marked the official border between human and orc territory. About us. Rask picked up a smooth stone, turned it over in his hand. Sometimes, but I've spent too much of my life worried about what people thought. It gets exhausting. Tell me about it. Everyone in Millcrest has an opinion about how I should run my business. Too generous, not generous enough. Should hire more staff, should expand, should specialize, should do literally anything except what I'm actually doing. Do you listen? Hell no, I smile and nod and then do exactly what I was planning to do anyway. Rask laughed. That deep rumbling sound that Alara had learned meant genuine amusement, not politeness. I like that about you. You have a spine. And you don't. I used to. I'm trying to find it again. Alara watched him skip the stone across the water. It bounced 4 times before sinking. Want to talk about what broke it? Not yet, maybe not ever. Is that okay? Of course, everyone's entitled to their secrets. Even you, especially me. I'm mysterious and enigmatic. You're about as mysterious as bread. Rude. Bread is very mysterious. Do you know how many variables affect the rise temperature, humidity, kneading time, yeast quality? All right. Bread is deeply mysterious. You're the mystical bread oracle. They both laughed, the sound carrying across the river. On the other side in orc territory, a figure stood watching. too far away to see clearly, but close enough that Alara felt the weight of the stare. "Friend of yours?" she asked Rask, nodding toward the figure. Rask followed her gaze. His entire body went rigid. "No, we should go." "Rask, please, we need to go, now." The urgency in his voice made her move. They hurried back to the bakery, Rask checking over his shoulder repeatedly. When they reached the shop, he ushered her inside and locked the door. "What was that about?" Alara demanded. "Nothing, just someone I'd prefer not to see. Someone dangerous. Potentially, I don't know." He ran a hand through his hair, agitated. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have brought trouble near you." "Rask, you're not making sense. Who was that?" "I can't tell you." "Can't or won't, both." He met her eyes. "Please trust me. It's better if you don't know." Alara crossed her arms. "So you get to know all my secrets, but I don't get to know yours. This is different." "How ma? Because my secrets could get you killed." The words hung in the air like smoke, heavy, suffocating. "I think," Alara said slowly, "that you need to tell me what's going to Mom, because if someone's watching you watching us, I deserve to know why." "It's complicated." "Uncomplicates it." "Alara." "Rask." She stepped closer, looked up at him. "I trust you. You know I do. But trust goes both ways. Whatever you're running from, whatever secrets you're carrying, I can handle it. I'm not fragile. I'm not going to break. Just tell me the truth." Rask looked torn. She could see the war happening behind his eyes, the desire to protect her, warring with the desire to be honest with her. Finally, he spoke. "My name isn't really Rask." Alara's stomach dropped. "What? It's close. My full name is Rask Stoneborn, but I didn't give you my title. I'm Prince Rask Stoneborn, third son of King Darius, heir to the High Crown territories." Alara stared at him. You're royalty." "I was. I abdicated my position 6 months ago. After my brother died, after I failed to save him, after I realized I was a terrible prince who couldn't even protect his own family. That's why you had silver, why you know politics and trade routes, why you're educated. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because people change when they know. They see the title instead of the person. They want things access, influence, money, or they hate me on principle because I represent everything they despise about royal families." He looked at her desperately. "You saw me as Rask, just Rask. For the first time in my life, someone looked at me and didn't see a prince, didn't see a failure. Just me. I wanted to keep that. I'm sorry." Alara's mind was racing. A prince. She'd been working with, laughing with, growing to care about a prince. And he'd lied about it, or at least omitted it, for a month. "Did you leave the palace?" she asked. "Or did they exile you?" "I left. My father wanted me to stay, to fulfill my duties. But I couldn't. Every time I looked at the throne room, I saw Theron. Every council meeting was a reminder that I was alive and he wasn't. I couldn't breathe there." "So you ran?" "Yes, I ran, like I always do." His voice was bitter. "I ran and ended up here starving in a border town, saved by a baker who was kinder than I deserved." Alara processed this, tried to match the exhausted, traumatized man in front of her with the image of a royal prince, found that she couldn't. Because to her, he was still just Rask, the man who burned rolls and laughed at her terrible jokes and held her hand during nightmares. "Are you in danger?" she asked. "Is that what the figure by the river was about?" "Possibly. My father's court. There are people who want me back, who think I should face consequences for abandoning my duties. And there are people who want me dead because a missing prince is politically useful. I don't know which camp that watcher belonged to." "So you're hiding." "I'm trying to disappear." Alara thought about this, thought about the risk of harboring a runaway prince, thought about the complications, the danger, the absolute insanity of getting involved in royal politics. Then she thought about Rask, not Prince Rask Stoneborn, but just Rask sitting on her back steps at 3 in the morning, crying over a brother he couldn't save, laughing over burned bread, teaching himself to bake like it was the most important skill in the world. "Okay," she said. Rask blinked. "Okay. Okay, you're a prince. Okay, you're hiding. Okay, there might be danger. I still trust you. I still want you here. And I still think you make terrible puns." "That's it." You're not angry, I lied. You didn't lie, you just didn't mention it. There's a difference, Warshaw. Alara moved closer, put her hand on his arm. Everyone's running from something in Millcrest. Your something is just bigger and more complicated than most. But you're still you. Still the man who shows up every morning to need dough. Still the person who makes me laugh. Still the friend I trust. That doesn't change because you have a title. Rask looked at her hand on his arm, then at her face. You're remarkable, you know that. I'm practical. There's a difference. No, you're remarkable. He covered her hand with his, that same gentle, reverent touch he used with bread. His skin was warm, rough with calluses, and Alara felt her heartbeat quicken. We should probably be careful, she said quietly, if people are looking for you. I know, I'll understand if you want me to leave. To protect yourself. Don't be stupid. I just said I trust you. But we need to be smart. Keep your head down. Stay out of sight of the border. No more walks by the river. Agreed. They stood there, hands clasped, something unspoken but powerful flowing between them. Then Alara did something impulsive, something she'd been thinking about for days but hadn't had the courage to do. She stood on her toes and kissed him. It was brief, barely more than a press of lips, but it sent electricity through her entire body. Rask went completely still, stunned. When she pulled back, his eyes were wide. Sorry, she said. Not sorry at all. I wanted to do that, before anything else complicated happened. Don't apologize. His voice was rough. Do it again. So she did. And this time he kissed her back, one hand coming up to cup her face with incredible gentleness, the other wrapping around her waist and pulling her close. He was warm and solid, and he tasted like the honey bread they'd shared that morning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Alara rested her forehead against his chest. Well, she said, this is new. Good new or bad new? Terrifying new, but good. Agreed. They stood there holding each other while outside the afternoon sun slanted through the windows and the world continued on, unaware that everything had just changed. The fifth week, they fell into a new rhythm. It was subtle to outside observers, nothing had changed. Rask still arrived at dawn, still helped with the baking, still left in the evenings. But inside the bakery, everything was different. Now when they worked side by side, their shoulders would brush, and neither would move away. Now when they talked, their eyes would meet and hold. Now when they shared meals, their knees would touch under the table. They didn't talk about what they were, didn't define it. The kiss had happened and now existed between them like a promise unspoken, but understood. Alara had never been in love before. She'd had crushes, brief infatuations, but nothing like this. Nothing that made her heart race when she heard his footsteps on the stairs. Nothing that made her day feel incomplete if they didn't laugh together at least once. She was terrified and exhilarated and completely, utterly lost in feeling she didn't know how to name. Rask seemed equally overwhelmed. He'd mentioned once briefly that he'd been engaged before. A political arrangement his father had made. It had ended when he left the palace. Did you love her? Alara had asked. I barely knew her. We'd met 3 times. She was kind, intelligent, perfectly suitable. And I felt nothing. And now I feel everything. It's terrifying. Good terrifying or bad terrifying. Both. They were learning each other. Learning what made the other laugh, what caused pain, what provided comfort. Alara learned that Rask was ticklish behind his ears, that he sang while he worked quiet orc songs in a language she didn't understand, that he had a sweet tooth that rivaled children. Rask learned that Alara talked in her sleep, that she had a terrible sense of direction, that she cried at sad stories but laughed at terrible jokes, that she touched people when she talked, small unconscious gestures, a hand on an arm, a brush of fingers that spoke to the warmth beneath her practical exterior. They were building something. Neither knew exactly what, but it felt important. It felt real. Then on the last day of the 5th week, everything shattered. They were closing up the bakery, working in comfortable silence when the door burst open. 3 orcs entered. Warriors, clearly they moved with the disciplined precision of trained soldiers. Their armor bore the crest Rask had briefly described the High Crown territories. The royal family, the leader, a scarred orc woman with commander insignia, locked eyes on Rask. Prince Rask Stoneborn, she said formally. Your presence is required at the palace immediately. Alara felt Rask go rigid beside her. I'm no longer a prince, Commander Thara, he said quietly. I abdicated. I have no place at the palace. Your abdication was never formally recognized. King Darius is dying. You and your remaining brother are needed to determine succession. The words landed like hammer blows. King Darius. Dying. How long? Rask's voice was barely a whisper. Days, perhaps a week. He's asking for you. Rask looked at Alara. She saw everything in his face, the conflict, the pain, the impossible choice forming. I need a moment, he told Commander Thara. We don't have time. I said I need a moment. His voice held command now, the prince emerging. Wait outside. The commander hesitated, then nodded curtly. The three warriors filed out. Rask turned to Alara. I have to go. I know. I don't want to. I know that too. Come with me. The words burst out of him. Come to the palace. Be with me. I can't face this alone. Alara's heart clenched. Rask, I'm a baker. I don't belong in a palace. You belong wherever you choose to be, and I choose you, please. She looked at him, this impossible man, this prince who kneaded dough and told terrible jokes and held her like she was precious. This man she'd somehow fallen in love with over burned bread and dawn conversations. If I come, she said slowly, I'm not changing who I am. I'm not going to curtsy and wear fancy dresses and pretend to be someone I'm not. I don't want you to. I want you exactly as you are. And if they don't accept me, your family, the court, then they'll have to learn to live with disappointment. I'm done living my life for other people's approval. Alara took a breath, made a decision that felt insane and necessary and terrifying. Okay, I'll come, but first I need to close up the bakery properly. Give me 10 minutes. Rask's face flooded with relief. Take 15. Thank you. Thank you. She spent the next 15 minutes in a blur, closed accounts, left a note for her supplier, packed a bag with practical clothes and her mother's recipe book, stood in the middle of her bakery, her home, her life's work, and wondered what she was doing. Then she looked at Rask waiting in the doorway and knew. She was choosing love, choosing possibility, choosing the terrifying unknown over the safe familiar. She was choosing him. Ready, he asked. No, let's go anyway. They stepped out into the street together. The warriors were mounted on huge horses bred for orc riders. A fifth horse waited for Rask and a smaller one for Alara. As she climbed into the saddle, Alara looked back at her bakery one more time. Then she turned forward toward Rask, toward the unknown, and rode away from everything she'd ever known. The journey had begun. The high-crowned palace was carved into the side of a mountain. Alara had heard descriptions everyone in the border territories had, but descriptions couldn't capture the sheer overwhelming scale of it. The palace wasn't built so much as hewn from the mountain itself, thousands of tons of granite, shaped into halls and towers and battlements. It rose 7 stories above the mountain road and descended at least 3 more levels below. Banners bearing the royal crest, a crown atop 2 crossed hammers, snapped in the wind. It was impressive, it was intimidating, it was absolutely terrifying. Alara had been riding for 2 days. 2 days of sore muscles and sleeping on the ground and trying not to think about what waited at the journey's end. Rask had ridden beside her the whole way close enough that their stirrups occasionally knocked together. They hadn't talked much. The warrior set a punishing pace that didn't allow for conversation, but his presence had been a constant comfort. Now looking at the palace, Alara felt that comfort slipping away. It's big, she said. Her voice came out smaller than intended. It's absurd, Rask agreed. My great-great-grandfather was compensating for something, probably his terrible personality. Despite her nerves, Alara laughed. Did you just insult your own ancestor? He carved his face into a mountainside. He deserves insult. Commander Thara, who'd been maintaining a stoic silence for 2 days, made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. They rode through the gates, massive iron things that took 6 guards to operate, and into the outer courtyard. Alara had expected it to be military austere. Instead, there were gardens, actual gardens with flowers and fruit trees and fountains. Orc children played near one fountain, supervised by nurses. A group of elderly orcs sat on benches playing some game with carved stones. It was normal, unexpectedly, jarringly normal. This is the public courtyard, Rask explained. seeing her surprise. Commoners have access during the day. My grandmother instituted the policy. She said a palace that feared its own people wasn't worth defending. Smart woman. The smartest. You'd have liked her. They dismounted. Immediately, servants appeared to take their horses. Alara tried not to flinch when one approached her, a young orc male who bowed respectfully and murmured, "Welcome to the High Crown Palace, honored guest." "Thank you," Alara managed. Rast placed a hand on the small of her back. A subtle gesture, but it anchored her, reminded her that she wasn't alone in this. Commander Thara led them through a maze of corridors, stone walls hung with tapestries depicting orc history, floors of polished granite that reflected the torchlight. Ceiling so high, Alara's footsteps echoed. They passed orcs of all descriptions, warriors in armor, scholars carrying books, servants with baskets of supplies, nobles in fine clothing who stared at Rask with open shock. "Prince Rask," one elderly orc said, stopping mid-stride. "You've returned. The palace rejoices." "Thank you, Lord Thorin," Rask said, politely not stopping. More stares, more whispers. Alara heard fragments. Thought he was dead. "Look at him, who's the human?" She lifted her chin and kept walking. She might be out of place, might be underdressed and overwhelmed, but she wouldn't show it. Border town lesson. Never let them see you sweat. Finally, they reached a set of doors carved with intricate designs. Two guards stood, watch spears crossed. "Prince Rask, Stoneborn, and guest to see King Darius," Commander Thara announced. The guards uncrossed their spears and pushed the doors open. The room beyond was large but surprisingly intimate. A bedroom, not a throne room. The bed was massive, canopied in deep blue fabric. Windows overlooked the mountains, and in the bed propped up on pillows was an orc who looked like he'd been carved from the same granite as his palace, but carved roughly features weathered by age and illness. King Darius was dying. Even Alara with no medical training could see it. His skin had that gray tinge that spoke of systems failing. His breath was labored, but his eyes dark brown like Rask's were sharp and alert. "Rask," he said. His voice was surprisingly strong. "You came." "Of course I came." Rask moved to the bedside and Alara saw his hands trembling. "Father, don't apologize. I know why you left. I understand. I didn't like it, but I understood." The king's eyes found Alara. "And who is this?" "This is Alara Vance. She's important to me." "Important how?" "In every way that matters." Darius studied her with the focus of someone who'd spent a lifetime reading people. Alara forced herself to meet his gaze, to not look away. Finally, the king smiled. "She has spine. Good. You need someone with spine. Your mother had spine. Probably why I fell in love with her." He gestured weakly. "Come closer, Alara Vance." Alara approached the bed, hyper-aware of every step. "You're a human," Darius observed. "I am. And you care about my son?" "I do." "Why?" The question wasn't hostile, genuinely curious. "Because he shows up every morning before dawn to need bread," Alara said. "Because he laughs at terrible jokes, because he's kind, and he tries so hard to be better than he believes he is. Because when I look at him, I don't see a prince. I see Rask. And Rask is worth caring about." Darius was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "Good answer. Honest. I appreciate honesty." He looked at Rask. "You've chosen well, my son. Hold on to her." "I intend to." "Good." Darius's expression grew more serious. "Now, we need to discuss succession. Your older brother, Kael, arrived yesterday. He's next in line, but the council has concerns. He's been absent, living abroad pursuing philosophical studies rather than learning governance. There are questions about his readiness." "Then train him," Rask said. "He's smarter than me, more patient. He'll make a better king." "Perhaps, but the law requires both heirs to be present for the coronation, to stand witness. If one challenges, there must be formal combat for the throne. It's tradition." "I'm not challenging Kael for the throne. I don't want it. I know. But you need to be here, to stand with him, to show the kingdom that the succession is unchallenged. Can you do that?" Rask looked at his father, this man who'd led their people for 50 years, who'd built alliances and fought wars and held a kingdom together through sheer force of will, who was now dying, asking for one last service. I can do that, Rask said quietly. Thank you. Darius closed his eyes, suddenly looking exhausted. Commander Thera will show you to your rooms. Rest. We'll talk more tomorrow. And Rask, yes, father. I'm glad you're home. I missed you. Rask's voice broke slightly. I missed you too. The rooms assigned to Rask were in the royal wing, a suite of 4 connected chambers with ceilings painted with constellations and windows overlooking the valley below. It was beautiful. It was overwhelming. Alara stood in the center of the main room and tried to breathe. I know it's a lot, Rask said quietly. I can request a smaller space. No, it's fine. It's just, this is bigger than my entire bakery. Most things are bigger than your bakery. Rude. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. The visit with his father had clearly shaken him. A knock at the door interrupted them. A servant entered, an orc woman in formal attire, middle-aged with kind eyes. Prince Rask, I'm Marin, assigned to your household. I've prepared refreshments and drawn baths. Is there anything else you require? No, thank you, Marin. We're fine. Very good, sir. And Miss Vance, she turned to Alara. I've taken the liberty of arranging for appropriate clothing to be sent up. Court formal wear. I estimated your measurements, but alterations can be made. Court formal wear, Alara repeated. For the official functions, miss. There will be several over the coming days. Formal dinners, council meetings, the coronation itself. Alara looked at Rask helplessly. He stepped forward. Marin, Miss Vance she's not accustomed to court protocols. I understand, sir, which is why I'll also send up a protocol advisor. Someone to help navigate the more complicated social situations. That won't be necessary. It's fine, Alara interrupted. I'll take the help. I'd rather look like an idiot in private than in front of the entire court. Marin smiled. A wise attitude, miss. I'll send up Lyra. She's excellent with newcomers. After Marin left, Alara sank into a chair. What have I gotten myself into? My world, unfortunately. Rask knelt beside her chair. You don't have to do this, any of it. I can have Marin arrange a quieter space for you, somewhere away from the formal events. So I can hide while you face this alone. That's not what I came here for. You came here because I asked, possibly begged. I shouldn't have. This isn't fair to you. Rask. She took his face in her hands, made him look at her. I chose to come. Chose to be here. Chose you. Stop trying to protect me from my own choices. I just don't want you to regret this. The only thing I'll regret is if you keep treating me like I'm fragile. I'm not fragile. I'm terrified, yes, but I'm not fragile. There's a difference, he kissed her palm. You're remarkable. You keep saying that. Because it keeps being true. The bath was hot and exactly what Alara needed. She soaked until her fingers pruned trying to process the last 48 hours. 2 days ago, she'd been in her bakery living her normal life. Now she was in a palace about to attend court functions surrounded by royalty and politics and situations she had absolutely no training for. It should have felt like a mistake, like she'd made a terrible decision in a moment of emotional weakness. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something terrifying and important and real. When she emerged from the bath, she found clothing laid out on the bed. Formal wear, as Marin had promised, but not the restrictive, ornate garbage she'd been expecting. The outfit was practical loose pants that would allow movement, a tunic belted at the waist, a long vest embroidered with subtle patterns. Comfortable, functional, beautiful in its simplicity, and in human proportions, which meant someone had been very thoughtful about measurements. Alara dressed feeling simultaneously more and less herself. The clothes were finer than anything she'd ever owned, but they fit. They worked. A knock at the connecting door. Alara, are you decent? Come in. Rask entered and stopped short. Oh. Oh good or oh bad? Oh, you look. He seemed to struggle for words. Really, really beautiful. Alara felt her cheeks heat. It's the fancy clothes. No, it's you. The clothes just give me permission to say it out loud. Before she could respond, another knock. A young orc woman entered, barely adult with glossy black hair and nervous energy. Miss Vance, I'm Lyra. Marin sent me to help with court protocol. Right, protocol. Ilara looked at the girl who couldn't have been more than 19. No offense, but you look about as comfortable with this as I am. Lyra laughed nervously. I'm a junior court assistant. This is my first real assignment. Marin thought you'd prefer someone closer to your age rather than a stuffy old protocol master. Marin was right. Okay, Lyra, teach me how not to embarrass myself. What followed was 2 hours of crash course education. Lyra explained the basics, how to address royalty formally the first time, less formally after acknowledgement, how to navigate formal dinners, start with the outer utensils, work inward, how to handle introductions, wait for someone of higher rank to speak first, and approximately 6 dozen other rules that made Alara's head spin. This is impossible, Alara said finally. I'm going to mess something up. Everyone messes up, Lyra assured her. Last month, a visiting duke called the king Your Highness instead of Your Majesty and survived. You'll be fine. What if I'm not? Then Prince Rask will defend you. The king clearly likes you already, and anyone who causes trouble will face Commander Thera's disapproval, which is terrifying. That actually made Alara feel better. That evening, there was a formal dinner. Small by palace standards, only the immediate royal family and highest-ranked advisors. About 30 people. Alara sat between Rask and an elderly orc who introduced himself as Chief Advisor Brennan. Across from her sat another orc who had to be Rask's brother. Same dark eyes, same strong features, but leaner, and with an air of distraction, like his body was present, but his mind was elsewhere. You must be Alara, the brother said. I'm Kael, the other disappointing son. Kael, Rask said warningly. What it's true, father wanted warriors and statesmen. He got a soldier with trauma and a philosopher with no practical skills. Poor man. Father is proud of both of you, Chief Advisor Brennan said firmly. Father is too kind to say otherwise. But Kael smiled slightly. It's good to see you, brother. It's been too long. It has. Rask's voice was complicated warmth and guilt and something else. How have you been? Studying, writing, avoiding responsibility, the usual. The dinner proceeded with a formality that made Alara intensely uncomfortable. Multiple courses, elaborate presentations, conversations conducted in the kind of careful diplomatic language that said everything and nothing. She mostly stayed quiet, ate when others ate, drank when others drank, and tried not to do anything memorable. Then an older orc woman, Lady Sareth, based on the introduction, addressed her directly. Miss Vance, we understand you're a baker. The table went quiet, everyone listening. I am, Alara said. How interesting. And how exactly did you meet Prince Rask? The question wasn't friendly, it was a test. Alara could feel Rask tensing beside her. He walked into my bakery starving, Alara said simply. I fed him. Then he stayed to help with the work. We became friends. Friends, Lady Sareth's tone suggested the word meant something else. Something improper. Yes, friends. Is that complicated? For a prince and a commoner, generally yes. Then perhaps the complication is with the system, not the friendship. Several people inhaled sharply. Lady Sareth's eyes narrowed, but Chief Advisor Brennan laughed a genuine warm sound. Well said, Miss Vance. Well said. Lady Sareth looked like she'd swallowed something sour but said nothing else. The dinner continued. Alara had apparently passed some tests because the questions afterward were more genuine, less hostile. After dinner, Rask pulled her aside in the corridor. That was brilliant, he said. The way you handled Lady Sareth. Most people either crumble or get defensive. You just stated facts and moved on. She was being rude. I don't do well with rude. Neither do I, which is why we're a good team. They walked through the corridors together, heading back to their rooms. The palace was quieter now, most residents settling in for the evening. This is strange, Alara said. All of this. 2 days ago, I was measuring flour. Now I'm having dinner with royalty and wearing fancy clothes and trying to remember which fork to use. Are you regretting coming? No, but I'm also not sure I belong here. You belong wherever you choose to be. That's idealistic. Maybe, but it's also true. Rask stopped, turned to face her. Alara, I know this is overwhelming. I know you're out of your element. But please believe me when I say that you're handling this better than most people would. You're brave and clever, and you don't let people intimidate you. Those are exactly the qualities that matter here. I'm terrified every second. So am I. We can be terrified together. She kissed him then right there in the corridor where anyone might see. And he kissed her back, cupping her face with those gentle hands holding her, like she was precious. When they pulled apart, a voice cleared behind them. They turned to find Kael watching with an amused expression. Sorry, he said. Didn't mean to interrupt. Just wanted to say welcome to the family Alara. If you can deal with Rask's terrible mood and worse jokes, you're clearly stronger than the rest of us. Hey, Rask protested. It's true and you know it. Anyway, I'm glad you're here, both of you. This place has been unbearably grim without someone to lighten it. Kael nodded at them both and continued down the corridor. I like your brother, Alara said. Everyone likes Kael. It's annoying. You like him too. Unfortunately, yes. They continued to their rooms, and for the first time since arriving at the palace, Alara felt like maybe possibly she could navigate this world after all. The next 3 days passed in a blur of protocol meetings and increasingly comfortable navigation of palace life. Alara quickly learned the rhythms. Mornings were for formal business council meetings, diplomatic sessions, audiences with nobles. She wasn't required to attend most of these, but Rask insisted she be present for the informal gatherings, the meals where real decisions were made. Afternoons were hers. She explored the palace, got hopelessly lost, twice discovered a library that rivaled small cities, and spent hours reading about Orc history and culture. Knowledge was power, and she'd need all the power she could get. Evenings were formal dinners increasingly attended by nobles who'd heard about the king's declining health and came to position themselves for the transition of power. Alara watched the political maneuvering with fascination. It was like a very polite, very dangerous dance. Alliances formed and dissolved based on subtle conversations. Promises were made without anyone actually saying anything concrete. Power moved like water flowing toward those who knew how to channel it. This is exhausting, she told Rask one evening after a particularly tense dinner. How do you keep track of it all? Years of practice. And by practice, I mean years of being terrible at it until I learned. Were you really that bad? I once insulted 3 nobles in a single sentence without realizing it. My father didn't speak to me for a week. What did you say? I commented that their new alliance was refreshingly pragmatic, which apparently meant I was calling them opportunistic traitors who abandoned their principles for advantage. Were they? Absolutely, but you're not supposed to say it out loud. Alara laughed. This was what she loved about him, the way he could navigate formal protocols, while also acknowledging how ridiculous they often were. On the 4th day, King Darius took a turn for the worse. Alara heard the commotion, running footsteps, urgent voices, and found Rask white-faced in the corridor. He's dying, Rask said. Today, maybe tomorrow, but soon. They went to the king's chamber. It was crowded now, healers, advisors, family. Darius lay in his bed, breathing shallow skin, the gray of stone. But when he saw Rask, he smiled weakly. My son, come closer. Rask knelt beside the bed. Alara hung back, giving them privacy. I'm proud of you, Darius said. His voice was barely a whisper. I know I didn't say it enough, but I am. You're a good man, better than I deserved. Father, please. Let me finish. I'm dying. That means I can say whatever I want. He managed a weak laugh that turned into a cough. Your brother Kael will be king. He's ready, more ready than he thinks. But he'll need you, need your strength, your honesty. Will you stay? Help him? I'll stay as long as he needs me. Good. And that woman Alara, hold on to her. Women like that don't come along often. Your mother was like that. Fierce, honest. Wouldn't let me get away with any nonsense. I intend to hold on very tightly. Good. Darius's eyes closed. I'm tired now, so tired. But I'm glad you came home. Glad I got to see you one more time. I'm glad too, Father. Tell Kael, tell him he'll be a good king. Better than me. You were a great king. I was an adequate king who tried very hard. That's different. Darius's breathing was slowing. I love you, my son. Both my sons. Remember that. I love you too. They sat with him as he faded, Rask on one side, Kael on the other. Alara stayed back witnessing, but not intruding, as King Darius Stoneborn took his final breath. The silence that followed was profound. Then Kael stood. The king is dead. Long live the king, the advisors responded formally. Just like that, power transferred. KL was king now. Rask was something else. No longer heir, no longer prince in any meaningful way, just Rask. The funeral was held 3 days later, elaborate formal with representatives from every corner of the kingdom. Elara attended in somber formal wear, standing with the royal family watching as they honored a king who'd led their people for 5 decades. The coronation was scheduled for the following week, a deliberate gap to allow for mourning, but also to allow Kael to prepare. Elara found him in the library 2 days after the funeral, staring at a massive tome labeled Royal Protocols and Procedures. "This is nightmare," he said without preamble. "Did you know there are 17 different formal responses to diplomatic greetings, depending on the rank of the greeter and the context of the meeting? 17, Bitium. Sounds like you're having fun. I'm having a crisis. I'm going to be terrible at this." "Your father didn't think so." Kael closed the book. "My father was kind. Kindness makes people optimistic about impossible situations." "Is that what you think? This is impossible?" "I think I'm a philosopher being asked to rule a kingdom. I think I've spent my adult life studying abstract concepts while my brother learned practical governance. I think I'm about to fail spectacularly." Elara pulled up a chair. "Can I tell you something as someone who has exactly zero royal training? Please. You're scared because you care. People who don't care aren't scared, they just assume they'll be fine. But you care enough to be terrified of failure. That's actually a really good quality in a leader. Or it's paralyzing anxiety. It's both. But the caring part matters more than the anxiety part." Kael studied her. "No wonder Rask loves you. You're annoyingly sensible." "Thank you." It was a compliment, mostly. He reopened the book. "Will you stay?" "After the coronation, Rask will need support. And honestly, so will I. Having someone around who isn't caught up in the politics would be useful." "I don't know. I have a bakery in Millcrest. Sell it, or hire someone to run it, or don't keep it as an escape route if this all goes terribly wrong, but stay. Please." Elara didn't know what to say. The request was genuine. And the truth was, she'd been thinking about this for days. About what came next. About whether she could really build a life here in this impossible place with Rask. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "That's all I ask." That evening, Elara found Rask on one of the palace balconies staring out at the mountains. The sun was setting, painting the peaks gold and red. "Hey," she said softly. He turned, managed a tired smile. "Hey yourself. How are you doing, really?" "I'm processing. My father's death, Kael's coronation. The fact that I'm apparently staying here indefinitely to help my brother rule a kingdom I once ran away from. It's a lot." "It is. And you, we need to talk about you." "What about me?" "About whether this is what you want. Staying here, dealing with court politics, informal dinners, and people like Lady Sareth who think you're beneath me." "Do you think I'm beneath you?" "Of course not." "Then Lady Sareth can think whatever she wants." "But is this what you want?" He turned to face her fully. "Elara, you have a life in Millcrest, a business, independence, freedom to be yourself without constant scrutiny. Here you'll always be Prince Rask's human. You'll always be judged, always be analyzed. I can't promise it will get better." "Are you trying to talk me into leaving?" "I'm trying to make sure you're staying for the right reasons." Elara thought about it, really thought about her bakery, her safe space, her predictable life, about Millcrest, where she knew everyone and everything was familiar. Then she thought about Rask, about the way he looked at her like she was remarkable, about the way they worked together in comfortable silence, about the way he held her when she was scared and made her laugh when she was serious. "I'm staying," she said, "not for the palace or the politics or any grand reason. I'm staying because you're here, because we make sense together, because I'd rather face all of this with you than have peace and safety without you." "You're sure?" "I'm terrified, but I'm sure." He kissed her, then deep and desperate and relieved. And Elara kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it, all the fear and hope and love she didn't quite know how to say out loud yet. When they pulled apart, Rask rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said quietly. "I don't think I've said that yet, but I do. I love you." "I love you too, even though you're a terrible baker and you tell the worst jokes." "My jokes are excellent. They're objectively terrible. You laugh at them. Because they're so bad, they're funny. There's a difference." And they stood there together, holding each other while the sun set and the mountains turned from gold to shadow. Below them, the palace buzzed with preparations for the coronation. Above them, stars began to appear in the darkening sky. And between them, something solid and real and permanent was forming. Something that would have to survive the challenges ahead. But for now, in this moment, it was enough. The week before the coronation brought unexpected challenges. First, there was the issue of Alara's official position. She wasn't staff. She wasn't nobility. She wasn't even officially Rask's partner. They hadn't formalized anything, hadn't made any declarations, which meant she existed in a kind of bureaucratic limbo. Chief Advisor Brennan solved this by creating a position, cultural liaison to the prince. It was deliberately vague, meant nothing practical, but gave her official standing and a reason to be present at court functions. "This is ridiculous," Alara told Rask. "I'm not a cultural anything. You're human. You understand human perspectives in a way most of the court doesn't. That's actually valuable. I run a bakery." "You ran a bakery in a border town where humans and orcs coexisted peacefully. That's literally cultural liaison work. You just didn't have a fancy title for it." When he put it that way, she supposed he had a point. Second, there was the issue of Lady Sareth and her increasingly vocal opposition to Alara's presence. It came to a head at a formal dinner 5 days before the coronation. Lady Sareth, emboldened by wine and the support of a few like-minded nobles, addressed the table at large. "It's inappropriate," she announced, "for a human of no rank to be given such access to the royal family. It sets a dangerous precedent. What's next? Shall we give elves seats on the council? Invite dwarves to state dinners?" The table went quiet. Everyone looked at Alara. Alara, remembering Lyra's advice about waiting for someone of higher rank to speak first, stayed silent and calm. Rask was not calm. "Lady Sareth, you will apologize to Alara immediately." "For stating facts, I think not. For being deliberately insulting to an honored guest of this court. Guest, she's here because you brought her, not because she has any legitimate enough." Kale's voice cut through the argument. He'd been quiet most of the dinner, but now he stood. "Lady Sareth, I understand your concern for protocol. I appreciate tradition as much as anyone. But Miss Vance is here at my brother's invitation and with my explicit approval. She has been granted a formal position and has conducted herself with grace and dignity since arriving. If you cannot treat her with the respect her position deserves, perhaps you should reconsider your attendance at court functions." Lady Sareth turned red. "Your Majesty, You merely insulted a guest of the crown, in front of witnesses, using language designed to humiliate rather than to raise genuine concerns." Kale's voice was mild, but steel ran underneath. "If you have concerns about protocol or precedent, raise them with Chief Advisor Brennan in the proper channels. But you will not use formal dinners to air personal grievances disguised as policy objections. Am I clear?" "Yes, Your Majesty." Lady Sareth's voice was tight. "Good. Then I believe you have an apology to deliver." "I apologize, Miss Vance," Lady Sareth said through gritted teeth. "Apology accepted," Alara said simply. The dinner continued, a conversation resuming cautiously. But Alara noticed that no one challenged her presence after that. Later in their rooms, Rask was still furious. "I should have said something earlier. Should have shut her down the first time Kale handled it perfectly." Alara interrupted. "He's the king. His word carries more weight than yours would have. I still want to defend you. And I appreciate that, but I don't need defending from words. I grew up in a border town, remember? I've dealt with plenty of people who thought I didn't belong somewhere. How did you deal with them?" "Ignored them mostly, proved them wrong occasionally. The trick is not to engage unless absolutely necessary. If you fight every petty insult, you'll spend your whole life fighting. That's actually wise." "I know. I'm occasionally wise. It's very annoying." He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "What did I do to deserve you?" "Fed a starving orc. Best decision you ever made." "Second best." "What was the first? Coming back to find you again the next day." The coronation was magnificent. Ilara had never seen anything like it. The ceremony took place in the throne room, a massive space carved from the mountain itself with a ceiling that rose 50 feet and windows that let in shafts of colored sunlight. Hundreds of nobles packed the space arranged by rank and precedent in a configuration that had probably taken weeks to organize. Alara stood with the immediate royal family wearing formal attire that Marin had insisted was appropriate for her position. The ceremony itself was long filled with rituals that had been performed for centuries. Oaths were spoken, symbols of power were transferred. Kael knelt then rose as king. Through it all, Rask stood straight and steady, supporting his brother, witnessing the transfer of power that meant he was no longer heir to anything except his own choices. After the ceremony, there was a feast, and then dancing, which was where things got interesting. "I don't know how to dance," Alara hissed at Rask as nobles began pairing off. "Neither do I. We'll fake it." "That's a terrible plan. Do you both have a better one?" She didn't. So they stepped onto the floor together, and Rask took her hand, and they attempted something that might charitably be called dancing if you were feeling very generous. They were terrible. Absolutely objectively terrible. They stepped on each other's feet, lost the rhythm twice, and ended up laughing so hard they had to stop. Around them, nobles stared with open shock. "This is undignified," Alara whispered. "Probably. Want to stop?" "Absolutely not." They kept dancing badly joyfully, not caring what anyone thought. And slowly, other couples started to relax, started to laugh, started to dance less formally. By the end of the evening, the throne room was filled with laughter and music and the kind of celebration that felt real instead of performed. "You're good at this," Kael told Alara later during a quiet moment. "Making people forget to be so rigid. It's a valuable skill." "I just wanted to have fun." "Exactly. Most people at court forgot how to have fun years ago. You reminded them. That matters." The celebration lasted until dawn. When it finally ended, Alara and Rask stumbled back to their rooms exhausted and happy. "So," Rask said, collapsing onto the bed, "you've officially survived a coronation. How do you feel?" "Like my feet are going to fall off. Dancing was a mistake." "A fun mistake." "The best kind." She lay down beside him. "Your brother is officially king now." "He is." "How do you feel about that?" "Relieved mostly. Kael will be good at this. Better than I would have been. I can support him without the weight of the crown on my own head." "And what about us?" "What happens next?" Rask rolled to face her. "That depends. What do you want to happen?" "Honestly, I want to go back to Millcrest. Reopen the bakery. Teach you how to properly knead dough without creating dense bricks. Live a normal life." "That sounds nice. But I also want to be here when Kael needs me. Want to help him build something better than what we inherited. Want to prove that humans and orcs can work together, can understand each other." "So we're torn between two worlds." "Seems like it." They lay in silence, both thinking. Then Alara said, "What if we do both?" "Both. Spend half the year here helping Kael being part of the court. Spend the other half in Millcrest running the bakery living normally. Bridge the gap between the two worlds." Rask thought about this. "That could work. It would mean a lot of travel." "I like traveling now. Gets me out of my comfort zone." "You're serious about this?" "I'm serious about you. Everything else we'll figure out." He kissed her then, deep and slow and full of promise. When they pulled apart, he said, "Marry me." Alara blinked. "What? Marry me? Not for political reasons or alliances or any formal nonsense. Just marry me. Be my partner officially. Build this strange, complicated, wonderful life together." "That's the most unromantic proposal I've ever heard." "Is that a no?" "It's a you can do better than that." Rask sat up, pulled her up with him, took both her hands. "Alara Vance, you walked into my life when I was broken and starving. You fed me bread and kindness and asked nothing in return. You taught me to laugh again, to hope again, to believe that maybe I wasn't defined by my worst failures. You're brave and smart, and you make terrible puns, and you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Will you marry me?" "Much better." She was crying now, happy tears that she didn't try to hide. "Yes, obviously yes." He kissed her, and then they were both laughing and crying and holding each other while outside the sun rose on the first day of Kikel's reign. The first day of their new beginning, the complicated, terrifying, beautiful future they would build together. The wedding took 3 months to plan. Not because Alara and Rask wanted an elaborate ceremony, quite the opposite, but because every decision became a political statement, every choice analyzed, every detail scrutinized by nobles who saw the union as either a dangerous precedent or a necessary evolution. "We could just elope," Rask suggested one evening after a particularly frustrating meeting about table arrangements. "Tempting," Alara admitted, "but your brother would kill us. He's using this wedding to make a statement about unity and cooperation. If we run off and get married by some random priest in the woods, we undermine that. I hate it when you're right. Get used to it. I'm right frequently." Chief Advisor Brennan had assembled a team to handle the logistics. The ceremony would blend human and orc traditions, a deliberate choice to symbolize what the marriage represented. Half the ceremony in the palace throne room, half in the human temple in the valley below. Vows spoken in both languages, witnesses from both peoples. The guest list alone took 2 weeks to finalize. Too many nobles invited and it became exclusive. Too few and people felt slighted. Inviting humans from the border territories opened questions about which ones. Not inviting them suggested the marriage wasn't really about unity at all. Alara hated every minute of the planning, but she endured it because it mattered, because symbols mattered, because this wedding wasn't just about her and Rask, it was about proving that different worlds could merge. The dress was another complication. Orc wedding traditions called for armor, symbolic protection for the joining of households. Human traditions call for elaborate gowns, symbolic beauty in new beginnings. "I'm not wearing armor," Alara told Marin flatly. "I can barely walk in regular formal wear. Armor would be a disaster." "Then perhaps a compromise," Marin suggested. "A gown with armored elements, decorative chainmail shoulders, something that honors both traditions." They settled on a design that made Alara feel both powerful and beautiful. A flowing gown in deep blue Rask's favorite color with subtle steel threading that caught the light. Sleeves that incorporated delicate chain patterns. A bodice that suggested armor without the weight. When she tried it on for the first time, she barely recognized herself. "You look like a warrior queen," Lyra breathed. "I look like I'm playing dress-up." "You look like you're getting married to a prince and making everyone who ever doubted you realize they were wrong." That Alara decided she could live with. The night before the wedding, King Kale hosted a private dinner. Just family Rask, Alara, Commander Thara, who'd become something like an aunt to the royal brothers and Chief Advisor Brennan. "Tomorrow you'll be officially family," Kale said, raising his glass. "Which means I can stop being polite and start being honest about how annoying Rask actually is." "I'm delightful," Rask protested. "You're stubborn, dramatic, and you steal my books without asking." "That was one time. 7 times, I'm counting." Alara laughed. This was what she loved about these moments, when the formality dropped and they were just people who cared about each other. "Seriously though," Kale continued, his tone softening, "I'm glad you're joining our family, Alara. You make my brother happy. You make him better. And you've made this court less suffocating just by being yourself. Thank you for that." "You're welcome, though I'm not trying to make anyone better. I'm just trying to survive court politics without accidentally insulting someone important." "You insulted Lady Sarah 3 times last week," Commander Thara observed. "She deserved it every time." "Agreed, but still, you're doing fine." After dinner, Rask walked Alara back to her rooms. She was staying in guest quarters tonight, another tradition keeping the bride and groom separated the night before the wedding. "Tomorrow," Rask said, holding both her hands, "tomorrow you'll be my wife. Tomorrow you'll be stuck with me permanently. Last chance to back out." "Not a chance. You're the best thing that ever walked into my life. I'm not letting you escape. Even though I can't dance. Especially because you can't dance. It's endearing." She kissed him, slow and sweet and full of promise. "I love you, Rask Stoneborn. All of you. The prince and the baker and everything in between." "I love you too. Sleep well." "Not likely. I'm too nervous." "Want me to stay?" "Just to talk." "Against tradition." "Since when do we care about tradition?" "Good point." They spent the night talking about everything and nothing, about their fears for tomorrow, their hopes for the future, the absurdity of formal ceremonies, about the bakery in Millcrest and whether they could actually make the dual life arrangement work, about children, whether they wanted them, what it would mean to raise half-human, half-orc children in a world that didn't quite know how to accept them yet. "We'll figure it out," Rask said finally, as dawn started to lighten the sky. "Everything, one step at a time. Together. Always together." The wedding day arrived with perfect weather. Clear skies, warm sun, a gentle breeze that made the banner snap cheerfully above the palace. Alara woke early, was immediately surrounded by Marin and Lyra and half a dozen other attendants who descended like a very organized swarm. They did her hair, her makeup helped her into the dress, adjusted everything 17 times until it was perfect. When Alara finally looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked regal, powerful, like someone who belonged in a palace. "You're beautiful," Marin said softly. "Truly. I feel like an imposter." Everyone feels like an imposter on their wedding day. That's normal. A knock at the door. Commander Thara entered, looking uncomfortable in formal attire rather than her usual armor. "The king sent me to escort you," she said. "He thought you might appreciate a friendly face." "I do, thank you." They walked through the palace corridors together. Alara could hear the crowd gathering, hundreds of voices, music, the rustle of formal clothing. "Nervous?" Commander Thara asked. "Terrified." "Good. Shows you're taking this seriously." The commander paused. "For what it's worth, I approve of this marriage. Rask needs someone who won't let him wallow in self-pity. You're good for him." "That might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me." "Don't get used to it. I have a reputation to maintain." The throne room was packed. Every noble in the kingdom seemed to be present, along with representatives from human territories, even a small delegation of elves who'd come out of curiosity. The crowd parted as Alara entered, creating a path to the front where Rask waited. He was wearing formal armor, not practical battle armor, but ceremonial pieces that had been in his family for generations. Dark steel chased with silver, a cloak of deep purple, his hair pulled back to show his face clearly. He looked like a prince from old stories, strong and noble and impossibly handsome. When he saw Alara, his face lit up with genuine joy. She walked toward him, focusing on his face, ignoring the hundreds of eyes watching her every step. When she reached him, he took her hand and whispered, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You're not so bad yourself." The ceremony began, first in the throne room with orc traditions. Kael performed the binding ritual, wrapping their joined hands with cord woven from materials that represented their lives. Bread for Alara, symbolizing her craft. Steel for Rask, symbolizing his strength. The cord was tied in a complex knot that neither could undo alone. "Two lives bound," Kael intoned. "Two strengths joined. Two hearts made one. Witnessed by kingdom and king, this union is blessed." Then they processed to the human temple in the valley. It was a beautiful building, stone and stained glass, built 2 centuries ago when humans first settled this region. A human priest, Father Benedict, who'd made the journey from Millcrest specifically for this ceremony, performed the second half. Vows were spoken, rings exchanged, promises made before gods and witnesses. "Do you, Alara Vance, take this man as your husband, to stand beside him in joy and sorrow, in peace and conflict, in all the days of your life?" "I do." "Do you, Rask Stoneborn, take this woman as your wife, to honor her strength, cherish her spirit, and build a life together that transcends the boundaries of your birth?" "I do. Absolutely I do." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Even Father Benedict smiled. "Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss." Rask pulled Alara close and kissed her. The crowd erupted in cheers, human and orc voices joining together in celebration. When they pulled apart, Alara whispered, "We did it. We're married, actually married. No takebacks now. Wouldn't dream of it." The feast afterward was magnificent. Tables laden with food from both cultures. Music that blended orc drums with human strings. Dancing that started formal but quickly dissolved into joyful chaos. Alara and Rask danced terribly as always, and this time no one cared. They were celebrating and perfection didn't matter. As the evening wore on, Alara found herself cornered by Lady Sareth. The older woman looked like she'd been chewing nails. "Well," Lady Sareth said stiffly, You've certainly achieved your goal, married into royalty. I suppose congratulations are in order. My goal was to marry someone I love, Alara replied evenly. The royalty part was incidental. How convenient that you fell in love with a prince. Actually, I fell in love with a starving man who walked into my bakery. The prince part came later. Inconveniently, I might add. Lady Sareth sniffed. I still maintain this sets a dangerous precedent. Good. Some precedents need to be broken. You're very bold for a common baker. And you're very judgmental for someone who's never actually spoken to me as a person rather than a political statement. Alara stepped closer. Look, Lady Sareth, I know you don't approve. I know you think I'm beneath your standards. And honestly, I don't care. I'm not here to meet your standards. I'm here because I love Rask and he loves me and we're building something together. You can either accept that and move on, or you can spend the rest of your life being bitter about something that doesn't actually affect you. Your choice. She walked away before Lady Sareth could respond. Rask found her a few minutes later. I saw you talking to Lady Sareth. Everything okay? Fine, just establishing boundaries. You're magnificent. Have I mentioned that once or twice today? I could stand to hear it again. You're magnificent. They danced until midnight. Then they slipped away from the celebration, heading to their private chambers, while the party continued without them. So, Rask said, closing the door behind them, husband and wife, officially. How does it feel? Terrifying, amazing, right? She pulled him close. Exactly right. The next 6 months were a crash course in navigating married life while juggling two worlds. True to their plan, Alara and Rask split their time between the palace and Millcrest. 2 months at court helping Kale establish his reign and implement new policies. 1 month in Millcrest running the bakery and reconnecting with the simpler life they'd built together. It was exhausting. It was exhilarating. It was exactly what they'd both needed. At court, Alara's role as cultural liaison evolved into something real. Kael assigned her to work with the human settlements in the border territories, establishing better communication, addressing grievances, building trust. She was good at it. Her practical approach and refusal to be intimidated made her effective where polished diplomats often failed. You have a gift for cutting through nonsense, Kael told her after she'd resolved a dispute that had been festering for 3 years. People trust you because you don't talk like a politician. I'm not a politician. Exactly, that's why it works. In Millcrest, the bakery became something unexpected. Word had spread about Alara's marriage and the shop had become a curiosity. Humans came to see the baker who'd married a prince. Orcs came to see proof that cross-cultural marriages could work. Alara used it, made the bakery a gathering place, started hosting weekly dinners where humans and orcs could meet on neutral ground, share food, share stories. Small steps toward understanding. Rask helped in the kitchen, still learning, still occasionally burning things. But he was getting better, more confident. The nightmares about his brother had lessened. They still came sometimes, but less frequently, less intensely. I think I'm healing, he told Alara one morning while they worked side by side kneading dough. Actually healing, not just coping. Good, you deserve to heal. So do you. I'm not broken. Everyone's a little broken. You lost your parents, survived a plague, spent years alone. That leaves marks. He was right. Alara had spent so long focusing on survival that she'd never really processed the grief. Now with Rask's support, she was finally allowing herself to feel it, to remember her parents without the pain overwhelming everything else. They were healing together, building something stronger than what either had been alone. But not everything was peaceful. 5 months into their marriage, trouble arrived in the form of Lord Varden, a powerful noble who'd been quietly building opposition to Kael's progressive policies. He wanted the kingdom to close its borders, reject human alliances, return to traditional values. He saw Alara and Rask's marriage as the perfect symbol of everything wrong with the new regime. The confrontation came at a council meeting. Alara wasn't supposed to be there. It was a closed session for nobles only. But Kael had invited her specifically to discuss border settlement issues. Lord Varden stood, his voice booming across the chamber. Your Majesty, I must protest. This council has devolved into a circus. We now invite humans commoners to advise on matters of state. We allow marriages that mock our traditions. We open our borders to those who would dilute our culture. Lord Varden, Kale said calmly, if you have specific policy objections, please state them clearly. My objection is to the erosion of everything that makes us orc. We are warriors. We are strong. We do not need humans to tell us how to govern ourselves. No one is telling us how to govern ourselves, Kale replied. We're listening to perspectives that help us govern wisely. There's a difference. The difference is semantics. The result is the same weakness. Is it weak to seek counsel from multiple sources? Rask spoke up. Or is it weak to refuse information because it challenges your assumptions? Varden's lip curled. Ah, yes, Prince Rask, the warrior who ran away, the heir who abandoned his duty, and now the fool who married beneath his station. Forgive me if I don't value your opinion on strength. The room went silent. Alara felt Rask tense beside her. Careful, Lord Varden, Commander Thara said quietly. You're dangerously close to insulting the royal family. I'm stating facts. Prince Rask left when we needed him, returned only when his father was dying, and now he parades his human wife as if she has any right to be here. That's enough. Kale's voice cut like steel. Alara is here because I invited her, because her insights are valuable, because she's helped resolve conflicts that this council has been arguing about for years. If you cannot treat her with respect, you can leave. I will not be dismissed for speaking truth. You're not speaking truth, you're speaking prejudice disguised as principle, and I'm tired of it. Kale stood. This council exists to advise the crown, not to dictate policy based on personal biases. If you cannot separate your advice from your bigotry, then your counsel has no value. Varden's face purpled. The nobles will not stand for this. You cannot simply dismiss legitimate concerns. I'm not dismissing concerns, I'm dismissing you. Leave, now. For a moment it looked like Varden might refuse, might escalate this into something worse. Then Commander Thara stood, hand on her sword, not drawing it, just resting her hand there. A clear message. Varden left, but his parting words echoed in the chamber. This isn't over. After the meeting, Alara found Kael in his private office, head in his hands. That was a mess, he said without looking up. You handled it well. I made an enemy, a powerful one. You already had that enemy. You just made it public. Kael looked up. Varden has support, more than I'd like. There are nobles who agree with him, who think I'm too progressive, too willing to change tradition. Are you tata? Probably, but tradition for tradition's sake is just another word for stagnation. We can't stay isolated forever. The world is changing. We change with it or we get left behind. Your father would be proud of you. My father would tell me I'm being reckless. Then he'd support me anyway because that's what family does. Kael smiled slightly. Thank you for being here, for not backing down when Varden went after you. I've dealt with worse in Millcrest. At least here people use actual words instead of throwing rocks through my window. Did someone throw rocks through your window? Once, during the plague, some people blamed me for bringing the sickness because I'd helped orc traders. I nailed boards over the window and kept baking. Eventually they gave up. You're tougher than you look. I'm exactly as tough as I look. You all just don't know what to look for. The situation with Lord Varden escalated over the next month. He began holding private meetings with sympathetic nobles, spreading rumors about Kael's incompetence, questioning the legitimacy of decisions made under human influence. Alara became a particular target. Stories circulated about her that she was manipulating Rask, that she was a spy for human kingdoms, that her marriage was a political scheme to weaken the orc throne. We should do something, Rask said, after a particularly vicious rumor suggested Alara was using human witchcraft to control the royal family. Like what? Alara asked. Dignify these idiots with a response. They're making you into a villain. Let them. Anyone with half a brain knows it's nonsense, Viennas. But what about people without half a brain? There are a lot of them. Fair point. Chief Advisor Brennan called a strategy meeting. Alara, Rask, Kael, and Commander Thara gathered in a secure room. Varden is building towards something, Brennan said. He's too smart to just spread rumors without an end goal. I think he's planning to call for a vote of no confidence in the king. Can he do that? Rask asked. Technically, yes. If enough nobles support it, they can petition for a leadership challenge. It hasn't been invoked in over a century, but the law is still on the books. And if they invoke it, Kale asked, then you'd face a formal challenge, either through single combat, unlikely given your skill, or through a vote of the noble assembly. If you lose, you'd be forced to abdicate. The room went silent. We need to undercut his support, Commander Thara said finally. Find the nobles who are on the fence. Show them why Varden's wrong. How? Alara asked. Everyone looked at her. You're the proof, Brennan said. You're a human who's earned respect through competence. You've resolved disputes, improved relations with border settlements, and you've done it all while being exactly who you are. If we can show the nobles that cross-cultural cooperation works in practice, not just in theory, we undermine Varden's entire argument. So I'm the political prop. You're the evidence. There's a difference. Not much of one from where I'm sitting. But will you do it? Kale asked. Will you help me fight this vow? Alara looked at Rask. He squeezed her hand but didn't speak. This was her choice. What exactly would I have to do? She asked. Be visible. Attend functions. Show nobles what you've accomplished. Let them see that you're not a threat, you're an asset. I hate functions. I know, but you're good at them anyway. Fine, I'll be your political prop, but I'm doing it my way. No pretending to be someone I'm not. No putting on airs. They get the real me or they get nothing. That's all I ask. The campaign began immediately. Alara started attending more court functions, not just formal dinners, but actual working sessions. She presented reports on border settlement improvements, showed real data on how cooperation with human communities had increased trade by 18%, demonstrated practical results, not just idealistic theory. Some nobles were convinced. Many remained skeptical. But at least they were listening. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A food shortage hit the eastern provinces, combination of bad weather and mismanaged supply chains. The region was on the verge of famine. The council was debating solutions, but everything they proposed was either too expensive or too slow. Alara, sitting quietly in the corner during one of these debates, finally spoke up. This is a logistics problem, she said, not a production problem. Explain, Kale invited. The eastern provinces grow grain, the northern provinces raise livestock. But the infrastructure to move food between them is terrible. Half the grain rots in storage because there's no way to transport it efficiently. Meanwhile, people in the east starve while there's excess food 300 miles away. We know this, Lord Varden said dismissively. The solution is to improve roads. But that takes years and resources we don't have. Roads aren't the only solution. Rivers exist. The Silver Flow runs directly from the northern provinces through the eastern territory. Use barges, faster than carts, cheaper than building roads, and we can start immediately. Barges require infrastructure, docks, loading facilities. No, they don't. They require flat platforms and strong rope. I've seen it work in Millcrest. Human traders use river barges all the time. It's not elegant, but it's effective. The council debated. Alara provided more details, specific techniques she'd seen, calculations on how much food could move, how quickly, realistic timelines. Finally, Kale said, We'll try it. Alara, you'll oversee the implementation. Lord Brennan assign her whatever resources she needs. Varden objected. Your Majesty, giving a human a baker authority over a crisis of this magnitude is absurd. Is it absurd to use someone with practical experience, someone who's actually seen similar systems work? I'd rather have a competent baker than an incompetent noble. Kale looked directly at Varden. Results matter more than rank. I suggest you remember that. Alara spent the next 6 weeks in the eastern provinces. It was grueling work, organizing labor, overseeing barge construction, negotiating with local leaders who resented taking orders from a human, solving problems as they arose, and there were many. But it worked. Food started moving, starvation was averted. Within 2 months, the eastern provinces were stable again. When Alara returned to the palace, she was exhausted, dirty, and triumphant. Kale held a formal reception to honor her work. Half the noble council attended, including notably several who'd been sympathetic to Varden. You saved thousands of lives, Kale said publicly, through practical thinking, hard work, and refusal to be limited by conventional wisdom. This is exactly the kind of leadership our kingdom needs. Applause rippled through the chamber. Not universal, some nobles still looked skeptical, but enough to matter. After the reception, Lord Varden cornered Alara in a corridor. "Congratulations," he said. His tone was hard. "You've won this round." This wasn't about winning, it was about feeding people. Everything is about winning. You just don't see it yet. He stepped closer. "But understand this, you're a symbol now. A symbol of everything changing, and symbols can be destroyed." "Is that a threat?" "It's a warning. Change comes with a cost. You might want to consider whether you're willing to pay it." He walked away before she could respond. Alara stood there, heart hammering, recognizing the danger even if she couldn't quite name it yet. The threat manifested 3 weeks later. Alara and Rask were in Millcrest taking their monthly break from court. They'd just closed the bakery for the evening when Commander Thera arrived with 2 guards riding hard. "There's been an incident," she said without preamble. "At the palace. An explosion in the eastern wing. 3 people dead, 7 injured." "Gods," Rask breathed. "What caused it?" "Sabotage. Someone planted explosives. We're still investigating, but..." Thara looked at Alara. "The explosion was in the Cultural Liaison office. Your office, Bamas." Alara's stomach dropped. "I was supposed to be there. I had have been there if we weren't in Millcrest." "I know. That's why we think you were the target." "Why would someone..." But Alara knew. Lord Varden. He said symbols could be destroyed. "What?" Rask's voice went sharp. Alara explained the conversation after the reception. Thara's expression darkened. "That's enough for questioning. Maybe not enough for arrest, but we can bring him in." "Be careful," Alara warned. "He's smart. He won't have left evidence tying him directly to this." "Probably not, but someone helped him. Explosives aren't easy to come by. Someone supplied them, someone placed them. People make mistakes. We'll find them." They rode back to the palace immediately. The journey took 2 days. 2 days of Alara watching Rask become increasingly grim, increasingly angry. "I should have seen this coming," he said. "Should have protected you better. Oh, by locking me in a room, by letting Varden's threats win, by taking them seriously." "I did take them seriously. I just didn't expect murder." "That was naive." "Maybe, but I'm not going to bust my life in fear. If Varden wants me dead, he'll have to try harder than one bomb." "That's not funny." "It's a little funny, in a dark, terrible way." The investigation moved quickly. Commander Thara was thorough, methodical, and had no patience for noble privilege. Within a week, she traced the explosives to a weapons dealer who'd sold them to one of Varden's household guards. The guard facing execution confessed. Varden had ordered the hit, had wanted Alara dead to prove that humans were dangerous, that their influence led to violence. The irony was so thick, Alara almost laughed. Varden was arrested, tried before the Noble Council, found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and treason against the crown. The sentence was exile, permanent removal from the kingdom with execution if he ever returned. As guards led him away, Varden looked directly at Alara. "You think you've won, but you've just made yourself a martyr for every noble who sees what you represent. Kill me and you make me a symbol. Exile me and I become a story. Either way, I win." "You tried to murder me," Alara said flatly, "and you failed. You didn't make me a symbol. You just proved that violence loses to competence. That's not a symbol. That's a fact." Varden said nothing else as they dragged him away. The aftermath of Varden's trial shifted something in the court. The nobles who'd been neutral or quietly sympathetic to his cause had to distance themselves. No one wanted to be associated with attempted murder, and the nobles who'd supported Kyle and his reforms found new confidence. For Alara, it meant a strange kind of acceptance. She was no longer just Rask's wife or the human who'd married a prince. She was the woman who'd survived an assassination attempt and kept working anyway, who'd faced down a conspiracy and emerged stronger. Respect in the Orc court came from surviving adversity. She'd passed the test. "How do you feel?" Rask asked her one evening, weeks after the trial. They were in Millcrest again, sitting on the back steps of the bakery, eating bread that Rask had made himself, only slightly burned. "Strange," Alara admitted. "Someone tried to kill me, I should be traumatized, but mostly I'm just angry and tired. That's normal. Is it I feel like I should be falling apart? You process trauma differently than me. I internalize. You externalize. Neither is wrong. When did you get so wise about emotional processing? Palace Library has a surprisingly good psychology section. I've been reading. They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge in the darkening sky. I've been thinking, Alara said eventually, about the future, about what we're building. And, and I think we should expand. Make the bakery a real cultural center, not just dinners once a week, but classes. Orc language lessons for humans. Human cooking classes for orcs. Art exchanges, music. Make it a place where people come to understand each other. That's ambitious. It's necessary. Varden wasn't wrong about one thing. I am a symbol. Might as well use that for something positive. You want to turn our bakery into a political statement. I want to turn our bakery into proof. Proof that different cultures can not just coexist, but enrich each other. Rask thought about this. It'll be expensive, time-consuming, probably frustrating as hell. Probably. I love it, and let's do it. They started small, added language classes twice a week, brought in a human musician to teach orc students, invited an orc storyteller to share traditional tales with human children. It grew organically. Within 6 months, the bakery was hosting events almost daily. Within a year, they had to expand the building to accommodate everyone. And through it all, they kept baking, kept making bread, because bread was the foundation, the simple, honest thing that had brought them together in the first place. 2 years into their marriage, Alara discovered she was pregnant. The news came as a shock. They talked about children abstractly, but had never seriously planned for them. The idea of raising a half-human, half-orc child in a world that barely accepted their marriage felt overwhelming. Are you sure? Rask asked when she told him. The healer confirmed it yesterday. I'm about 8 weeks along. How do you feel? Terrified, excited, nauseous, mostly nauseous. Those are a lot of feelings. I'm growing a human. Multiple feelings are expected. They sat together in their rooms processing. Then Rask asked, do you want this, the baby? Yes, I think yes. Do you? Yes, definitely yes. But I'm scared about what it means for the child, for us. Me too. They talked late into the night about logistics, where they'd raise the child, how they'd split time between Millcrest and the palace. About politics, what it would mean to have a half-orc heir in the royal family. About practicalities, whether the child would be more orc or human, what health complications might arise from mixed heritage. But beneath the fear and the planning, there was excitement, real genuine joy at the thought of creating a family. Kyle was thrilled when they told him, I'm going to be an uncle. This is excellent. I'll teach them to read, and sword fighting, and how to navigate court politics without wanting to stab everyone. That last one will be very useful, Alara said dryly. The pregnancy was difficult. Morning sickness lasted well into the 5th month. Alara's human body struggled with carrying a child that had orc genetics. The healers monitored closely prescribed remedies, reassured her that complications were normal with mixed births. But Alara was healthy, strong, and stubborn enough to power through the worst of it. She worked until the 8th month overseeing the cultural center's expansion, attending council meetings, when she felt well enough helping in the bakery when she had energy. Rask was constantly anxious, hovered, worried. I'm pregnant, not dying, Alara told him after he tried to carry her upstairs for the 3rd time. I know, but you're also carrying our child, and I'm terrified something will go wrong. Join the club, but hovering isn't helping. He tried to give her space, mostly failed, but the effort was appreciated. The baby came 3 weeks early. Alara was in Millcrest against everyone's advice, but she'd insisted on spending time at the cultural center. The contractions started around midnight. Rask panicked beautifully. Ran in 3 different directions at once. Couldn't find the midwife. Nearly knocked over the healer's door, trying to summon help. Breathe, Alara told him between contractions. You're breathing for both of us. I don't know how to breathe right now. Try harder. You're making me more nervous. The birth took 16 hours, long, painful, exhausting. But finally, as dawn broke over Millcrest, their daughter was born. She was small, smaller than full orc babies, but larger than most human infants. Her skin was pale green, lighter than Rask's, but distinctly not human. Tiny tusks were just visible at her gums, dark hair already thick on her head. She was perfect. "We have a daughter," Rask whispered, holding the baby with infinite care. "We made a person." "We did. What should we name her?" They discussed names endlessly during the pregnancy. Human names, orc names, names that worked in both languages. "Mira," Ilara said suddenly. "It means peace in the old human tongue, and gift in Orcish." "Mira Stoneborn," Rask tested, then smiled. "Perfect, she's perfect." Raising Mira was an education in navigating two worlds. In the palace, she was treated as royalty, albeit unusual royalty. Servants doted on her. Kale spoiled her shamelessly. The court watched her grow with fascination and occasionally judgment. In Millcrest, she was just Mira, the baker's daughter. She played with human and orc children alike, learned to make bread before she could read, absorbed the casual integration of cultures that the town had built. She was brilliant, curious about everything, asked endless questions in two languages, often in the same sentence. By age 3, she could speak fluent Human Common and Orcish. By 5, she'd learned to read in both scripts. By 7, she was helping in the bakery and sitting in on cultural center classes. She was also stubborn, opinionated, had inherited Alara's directness and Rask's intensity. "She's going to be terrifying as a teenager," Commander Thera observed when Mira at age 8 argued with a visiting noble about trade policy and won. "She's terrifying now," Alara replied. "We're just managing it carefully." But the truth was they were immensely proud. Mira represented everything they'd fought for, proof that different worlds could merge, that children of mixed heritage could thrive. Not everyone agreed. There were incidents. A human child in Millcrest called Mira a freak when she was 6. Mira punched him in the nose, then baked him apology bread the next day. An orc noble at court suggested she was deluded when she was 7. Mira asked very politely if being mixed made her twice as strong, or if he was just too simple to do that math. Kale nearly died laughing. Alara grounded her anyway, but not without pride. "Where does she get this attitude?" Rask wondered. "From you, obviously." "I was thinking from you. Let's compromise and blame both of us equally." 10 years after their wedding, Alara and Rask stood in the cultural center. Now a massive complex that included classrooms, workshops, performance spaces, and yes, still a bakery at its heart. Mira, now 12, was helping teach a bread-making class. Human and orc students worked side by side following her instructions with varying degrees of success. "Remember," Mira called out, "the dough should feel like soft skin. If it's too sticky, add flour. If it's too dry, add water. Trust your hands, not your eyes." She sounded exactly like Alara had 10 years ago teaching Rask these same lessons. "We built something good," Rask said quietly. "We did." "Are you happy?" Alara thought about it. About the journey from that first morning when a starving orc walked into her bakery. About the terror of the palace, the assassination attempt, the struggles to prove herself. About the joy of watching Mira grow, watching cultures blend, watching people learn to see each other as individuals rather than categories. "Yes," she said, "I'm happy. Are you, Tim? More than I ever thought possible. More than I deserved." "You deserve good things. You just didn't believe it yet." King Kale arrived as he often did when visiting Millcrest. He'd aged well in the decades since his coronation, gray showing at his temples, lines around his eyes from laughter more than stress. "The council is asking about Mira," he said without preamble. "What about her?" Ilara asked, instantly wary, whether she might be interested in a formal position. "Cultural ambassador or something similar. She's got a gift for diplomacy, and she's only 12. "Absolutely not," Rask said. "She's a child." "I know, I told them the same thing. But eventually, when she's older, the position will be there if she wants it. No pressure, just options." They watched Mira help a struggling human student fix their dough consistency. Patient, kind, exactly the qualities needed for bridge building. "We'll let her decide," Alara said, "when she's ready. That's all I ask." That evening, after the classes ended and the center closed, the three of them, Alara, Rask, and Mira, sat in the bakery kitchen, the same space where it had all begun. "Tell me again how you met," Mira demanded. She'd heard the story dozens of times, but never tired of it. "Your father walked in looking like death," Alara began. I was dignified, Rask protested. You were starving and stubborn. Dignified, starving, Mira giggled. And then, and then your mother gave me bread, changed my whole life with one piece of burned bread. It wasn't burned, the crust was just well done. They told the story together, adding details, correcting each other, laughing at the memories. Outside, Millcrest settled into evening quiet. Above them, stars appeared in a darkening sky. And inside the bakery that had become a symbol of something larger than itself, three people, human orc, and the beautiful combination of both sat together in the warm smell of bread and new beginnings. What's your favorite part of the story? Mira asked when they finished. The part where your mother agreed to come to the palace, Rask said. That took more courage than I ever had. The part where we decided to build this place, Alara said, turn something small into something meaningful. I like the bread part, Mira announced, because bread is important. It feeds people, brings them together. You can't build bridges on empty stomachs. Alara and Rask looked at each other over their daughter's head. She's definitely ours, Rask said. Unfortunately for the world, Alara agreed. They stayed there until late, baking bread for tomorrow, telling stories from the past, dreaming about the future. Because that was what they did, what they'd always done. They built bridges one loaf at a time. They proved that different worlds could merge. They showed that love was stronger than prejudice, that kindness mattered more than rank, that the simple act of feeding someone when they were hungry could change everything. And they did it together. Always together, the end.